The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast and Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories. Today, I'm going to be having a chat with Julie. So, Julie, boom, you're in the room. So, Julie, if you can tell me where you were born, not necessarily when you were born, if you can describe to me what it was like when you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received. So it's all yours.
Great. Thank you. Yes, I was up north of Houston, Texas, and I was born in 1977, April 14th. I have a birthday coming up. And yeah, so I grew up in a very, I'd say, simple neighborhood. It felt just very safe. And I went to, over here in the United States, schools are ranked by, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A, 5A being like the most kids that attended in some of the biggest neighborhoods. I went to a 4A school. And and I would say education wise, school was always very challenging for me. So some of the friends I went to school with, they had great educations, but I didn't know when I was growing up. I actually found this out just about 5 years ago that I was dealing with a learning disability. So I always had a very hard time in school. And I was very quiet, but still managed to make good grades. So I think kids like us kind of get overlooked in the education system because I wasn't, I wasn't like causing problems in school. I just would kind of sit in the back. But it was always a struggle. I always had a hard time reading and learning. But I would say for the most part, it was an okay education. And like I said, some of my friends got great education where I went to school. So it seemed like more, if you were in the honors classes, you got a really high education. And if you weren't, which I was not, it was very basic and a lot of worksheets and a lot of, just reading the school books that are provided.
Wow. So, so what was the area like? What was the school like? Was it a really big school or was it just a small town school? What was the area like?
We had about 350 people in my graduating class. So it was a pretty big class. It was a very diverse area. We had a couple of different neighborhoods. So I never felt like it wasn't just kind of like an all white school. There was a very like healthy mix and diverse, which I loved. And and it was, it was, like I said, it was just kind of a simple neighborhood. It was I feel like nowadays we don't really have that middle class, but it was very much just like a middle class upbringing.
Mm. So what was the street like where you grew up? Was it like one of the big wide streets with sort of tree lined and sort of the traditional sort of houses that you see, or was it like you lived on like South Fork, like a ranch?
No, I did not. I lived off of a major highway called I-45. And if you exit the highway, the street I grew up was right off that highway. My parents still had the same house I grew up in. And it was it was just a, street where people would exit off the freeway and tend to come down. But, we'd still ride our bikes on the street and just very kind of, the yards are not ranch like, but also it was an acre. Like we lived on an acre and 4-bedroom house. So, yeah.
So it's a bit like you see on the movies then.
I guess so. Yeah.
So what about your early days then? What was your years 1 and 2 and so 1, 2, 3? How was that? Was that down the bottom of the street, the school there, or did you have to travel? Did you have to get in a car every morning and drive to school?
No, I took the bus. Always took the bus to school, and yeah, from kindergarten, my first day of kindergarten, I had a picture of me like getting on the bus, and that's just what we did back then. Is everybody got on the bus and went to
Mm.
school, and yeah,
So it was one of those big yellow buses, was it?
one of the big yellow buses. Yes,
Do they have any other colour buses for
yeah.
school, or is it just the same bus right across the Americas?
It seems to be. It seems to be like that. But yeah, I, as far as I know, I always see the big yellow buses everywhere I go.
So you're going into your middle school then.
Yes.
What was your favourite class?
Well, like I said, learning was very hard for me, so I wouldn't say there was a favorite class, but I enjoyed, let's see, I enjoyed choir, so that was fun. And I enjoyed writing a lot.
Hmm. And what sort of writing did you do? Did
Oh
you
my
have a
gosh.
particular subject that you like to write about? Was it like history? Was it like science fiction? What sort of writing did you like doing?
Definitely wasn't science fiction, and I cannot remember. I mean, I'm turning 46, so my early days are so far long ago. I can't remember the details of everything.
Fair enough. So so moving up through the schools then, were you sporty at all?
No, I would say I'm tall. I'm 5'9", and I love gymnastics, which was quite opposite for a 5'9" young lady or a tall young lady, growing up. But I love gymnastics. So I was in gymnastics for a long time, and then I was in tumbling when I didn't do gymnastics anymore, and I was in swim team for a while. But yeah, I was never the team sport. Well, I guess I would say in a traditional sense, both of those. There were some, team sports and competing, but it was more solo.
Yeah. Well, you say 5'9". I mean, 5'9" is an ideal height for a scrum half.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I just thought
know.
I'd just put the ball in there.
Yeah, I know. I know. I got asked all the time, "Do you play basketball?" And I always would say, "No, I don't."
Do you play rugby?
Yeah. We didn't really know about rugby where I grew up.
No, I guess not. I guess we, I guess it was either American football or it was rodeo. I guess Texas is known for rodeos, is it?
It is
Down
known
that
for it.
part of the world.
I was not the typical Texas girl though. I never liked cowboy boots or cowboy hats. So
Not into country music then.
not really into country music. No. I like some of the older country music. But yeah, I was more into pop and things like that.
Fair enough. So moving up through your schools then, what about your junior high?
Yeah, junior high, I started cheerleading and I thought that that was fun. We had a great squad and got to go do some little bit of like summer camps with it. And we happened to be really good. So that was a fun time. I loved cheerleading during my junior high days. And um, yeah, I guess you really kind of start to form more of your friends in junior high. I feel like who then goes
Yeah.
into high school and things like that. So yeah, I enjoyed junior high.
So what did you go off and do competitions and that in the cheerleading?
Not in junior high, but in high school I did. I decided after my freshman year that I didn't want to keep um, that. Yeah, I didn't care for cheerleading, and I wanted to do more of a competitive type squad. So I did a competitive cheer squad in high school.
So is there a difference then?
Yes, it's kind of, now they have select teams and club teams. It was kind of like that. Yeah, but it wasn't, nowadays it seems like, I don't know about over there, but over here, you have to be kind of in a club or a select team in order to get really good. And that was the first I had really heard of it, was when I was in high school. So
Yeah. Did you have any ambitions to becoming a professional in
no, no, I
it?
didn't.
You didn't want to be an Oilers cheerleader then?
No, I didn't. No, yeah, like I said, I was pretty tall. So by that time, I was always on the base and throwing people up. And, you really, even as a cheerleader, you have to be pretty small by the time they get into college and things
Mm.
like that. They usually have I'd say the men are more of the taller ones that throw the girls up and stuff. So, but yeah.
So, what about your graduation? Did you graduate with honours, or did you just scrape through?
No, since I had that learning disability I didn't know about, I did not graduate with honors, but I was able to, have a decent GPA. And, I cared about learning. It was just really challenging for me.
Hmm. And what about your prom?
Oh,
Did you go to the prom?
yeah, I went to the prom with some friends. We all went together, some good girlfriends and guys. We all were just really good friends, though.
And how was it?
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a big affair? I mean, did you obviously have it in the school in one of the big halls?
Yeah, no, we went to a lake. Lake Conroe was where we had our prom. And yeah, everybody got dressed up and went to dinner and then went to prom and danced and
Oh,
had fun.
all the guys in tuxedos and you in ball gowns.
Yes, yes. All taking pictures at our parents' house before and things like that.
And a big courgette, is it?
Yeah,
Is it a courgette? Big
yeah,
flower?
yeah, yes, we had floor flowers. And yeah, it was fun. I think it was the first. I mean, I'd gotten dressed up for other dances and things like that, but prom seemed to be really more formal.
Hmm. So, what was your first job, or what did you do when you left high school?
Well, my first job was before was during high school. Well, I mean, really, I started babysitting as early as I could. And then my first job was in high school. I worked at a clothing store. And then I started waiting tables in college when I went to college. And that took me through my undergrad and my graduate degree. So I enjoyed waiting tables. It was social, it's fun, and got to eat good food and learn about food and people. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Ah, so what did you major in?
My undergrad was in education and my master's was in counseling.
All right, so I guess the two go together, don't they?
Yeah, somewhat they do. Never thought about it that way, but they do.
Yeah, teaching and counselling. I mean, you're always going to have challenging kids, whatever school you're in, whether you're in the sort of the Ivy League stuff or you're in the inner city. You probably get
Yes.
more in the inner city than you do at the Ivy League schools. But so, how long were you in college for?
So my undergrad, I was 5 years. It was really challenging for me to transition from high school to college. I did not feel prepared. I and you know because learning was so challenging, it took me a full year to really understand how to learn how to learn in college. It was just totally different.
Mm.
And so that first year was not that great. And so I had tagged on another 4 years. And then my master's program was about 2.5 years.
So you did about 6.5 years altogether.
Yes.
So what did you do at the end of it once you qualified?
Well, right when I got my master's in counseling, I ended up meeting now my ex-husband, and we had kids, and I was more involved in his business, which ended up being the music industry, which is,
Oh
I was
right.
not, yes. and was involved in an amphitheater and helping with that early on. And and we had kids. And so then, of course, that was so important to, be a mom and take care of them. And that was really wonderful. So always, that was a fun time being able to be a part of that amphitheater and learn about the music industry a little bit and
So
get
what
to meet.
sort of music was it?
Well, that ended up. It's funny because I said I don't love country music, but that was more Texas country, which is a little bit different than regular country. It's they, it's I think they consider it a little more like what they call like red dirt, or I can't remember the exact name of what they call our Texas country musicians, but great musicians, great storytellers, and But we
So
had,
like the likes of Garth Brooks, is he from Texas?
I don't think he's from Texas, but no, this amphitheater held 5,500 people, and it was an outdoor amphitheater. So getting somebody like Garth Brooks was a little, it was too big for us. We had more like
Brilliant.
Willie Nelson and, um,
The Highwaymen.
yes, the Highwaymen. That's right.
Yeah, Waylon and Willie,
Yes.
Johnny Cash. So yeah, I remember
Yeah.
those guys. Still like those guys actually.
Oh, yeah. Great musicians.
So bring us on a little bit further then. So you're involved in the music industry and it's sort of Texas country music, which is slightly different, and bringing up kids.
Yes.
What do you have? Two kids,
Yes.
three kids,
I
handful.
have two kids. They're 13 and 10 now. So was bringing them up, and then we got a divorce 7 years ago. And so after that divorce, it was, and I will say this, right before I got a divorce, I got involved with the Sims Foundation, and the Sims Foundation supports mental health, music professionals and their mental health. We provide them resources and therapy. So, and that can be music professionals and even their family. It's a fantastic organization. So, once we got a divorce, I really dived into being on the board of that and supporting that, and started trying to find a job, and just things were not going well. And it was a really hard transition. And mental health has always been important to me because I struggled most of my life with mental health and anxiety and depression and things like that. So it was one of the reasons I got my master's in counseling, one of the reasons I was a part of the Sims Foundation. And and during that time, my mental health took such a turn in ways I was never expecting, that it was really challenging for me to get a job, really challenging for me to kind of do anything except be a mom. And I have my kids quite a bit. It's not the 50-50. It's more of like an 80-20 type situation. And so my kids were young, they were 3 and 6. And so it was a really hard time after that for a few years. And I had to make some real changes in order to kind of heal and get on a path that felt right and lead me to where I am now. So
Well, let's have a look at that then. So
yeah.
you managed to come through your mental health issues, and it's not difficult. I mean, or it is difficult, should I say, coming through a divorce, and that puts a strain on everything, particularly if it's like a bereavement, losing a partner. I don't know the details or anything like that, but most marriages break down for different reasons, and that then has an effect on both sides and the children.
It
So I
does.
guess that's did that rub off on the kids at all? Were they affected with the breakup?
Yeah, good question. So it definitely affected my son. He was 6 and he took it really hard. My daughter was 3. So, I'm sure it did affect her, but in ways, we won't ever
Mm.
really know. But anytime you have to uproot kids out of their, and they're going back and forth, and, it's such a hard transition for everyone. And I feel like my ex-husband and we did a really good job. We decided we were going to do this in a very thoughtful way. We were never going to talk poorly about each other. We're friends to this day. So I think even the best of divorces, pro, just present real challenges. Yeah,
Yeah.
on the kids and on everyone. So it
Mm.
takes time too. It takes a lot of time. I just feel like if you can put your kids first, and I mean, even though we had a pretty easy divorce, it was still hard. I mean, there were times I felt very angry, and I'm sure times he felt very angry, but we decided to put our kids first and to
Mm.
never talk poorly about each other, especially in front of them, and try to be there for them because you have these kids together. And I just see where sometimes it can weigh even more on them if you're sitting there bashing each other or,
Yeah.
so we really worked hard at that. And so, our kids are good, and they see us interacting and they see us being friends. So I think it's probably
Mm.
not as hard, but was still very challenging, especially in the
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah.
So kids quite often blame themselves for the parents breaking up, and then they just wish that they would get back together, and try and do all sorts of things to bring that effect around. I'm sure, and I'm sure you've experienced that with the kids where they want you to get back together, but I
Oh,
guess it's
yeah.
not to be.
No, I
Um,
mean, it's been like 3 years ago, my son was still saying it. He doesn't anymore, though. He sees.
mm,
I think he sees that, he can understand now that it was probably better. And I've talked a lot with them about that. Well, I used to, that this was never
yeah,
your fault. It was your father and I, like, we weren't, able to be together as a couple anymore. And this has nothing. So we talked a lot about that. Um, my son's gotten some help around it. My daughter was, like I said, she was just so young. Right now, it doesn't seem like she needs any, support around that. And it's been so long, but if
mm,
she ever did, we'd certainly get her help too.
yeah. So let's come out the divorce then, and let's look at what you did, um, going forward to support the kids and to yourself.
Yeah.
How did you get back into the work?
So it was a long process. I had to, I decided 4.5 years ago to stop drinking. And I basically everything I did was for my kids. Now I see it's important to do things for ourselves, to love ourselves enough to make hard decisions in life. But back then, it was just I did everything for the kids, and I knew that I knew I just had to do something to turn my life around. And I never thought that I had been drinking alcoholically, but it is a depressant, and it was never a depressant for me until it was. It
Mm,
was like all of a sudden, I'm crying and I'm very irritable, and I wasn't getting a job. And so I thought that was the next right step, was to make that change in my life. In a lot of ways, it was the right move, but it wasn't the move that all of a sudden my life completely took off and I got a job and all these things were happening. I found out after I stopped drinking that I had this learning disability, and I have at the time I had 20 different visual processing disorders, and
wow.
they had all, yes, and it had gotten so severe, it was all under the 20th percentile for my age. So there was a real reason I wasn't able to get a job. And so I had to go to eye therapy, and um, and work and heal my eyes. So there was that. And so it was still a real challenge. And I was still really struggling with my mental health, even though I stopped drinking. I mean, things had gotten better. I wasn't having panic attacks and things like that anymore. But I started seeing a trauma specialist because there were things that had happened in my life that were very traumatic. And so, yeah, that trauma specialist recommended that I go to a trauma intensive program that was 30 days to really help heal, kind of get recentered and be able to start my life again. And so I did that and I got back March 15th, 2020, and the lockdown was March 16th, 2020. So it was,
Don't we just remember it?
oh my goodness. I mean, it was, oh, wow. I was just glad to be home. I was nervous I wasn't going to be able to get home. And I took that flight home and there were two other people on it. And I was able to get home and be with my kids and really be the mom again I wanted to be. I felt, and I had done so much healing while I was there. It was such an awful time for so many people, and it was such a very healing time for me to kind of be with the kids again and be in that moment. And so it was during that time when, right before I had left for the trauma treatment program, I had started asking a few friends if they would share their stories around mental health and the resources they used, because I realized everything I would look for online to try and find people that were like me. Are there other people like this going through things like this in the world? Where are they? If it says 1 in 4, why don't I know of anyone? And so I asked some friends to share their stories, and they did. But of course, I had to pause that because then I went to trauma treatment and then the pandemic happened. But it was during that time, during the pandemic, I realized this is going to get worse and I need to continue creating these stories. And that's what I did. As soon as the world kind of opened back up, I started still like having people asking if they would share their stories around mental health and the resources they used. And I've just had such a wonderful response. And and that's when I created Speak as One. And because I really do feel like when people can open up and share parts of them that struggle, that we can speak as one, because there's going to be somebody else that it will help, know that they're not alone. So that's when all of it's like, I guess you can't get a job, you build one.
Yeah. So this was coming out of lockdown, was it? Did you do face to face or was it all virtual?
Yeah,
'Cause,
everything
I
I
mean, when we
yeah,
went into lockdown, everything became virtual. Zoom and Teams were the key
it
to doing anything.
yeah, it did. I waited until I guess it was 6 months or so after that where I could meet with people and we would just kind of sit apart. But everything I do is in person. I've had one, and I'm not opposed to doing things virtually. Um, but I try to create like little mini documentaries almost, where we have 3 cameras set up uh, and I haven't really transformed that into a podcast yet because I really believe in the power of seeing, people talk one-on-one about it. I want people to know that you can just talk about mental health. You can have these conversations. And I want people to be able to see the emotions on our faces when we're
Yeah.
talking about things that are challenging.
Well, I have a live show every Thursday where we have everyday conversations regarding mental health, and we've covered all manner of topics of mental health. So you'll be most welcome to come on and talk about your journey if you wish.
Oh, yeah, I'd love that. It's important. It's amazing that when you share how many people you help, and it's not something that you may even intend to do. I mean, one time I was having a conversation with the young lady and she was just she was asking me about Christmas. And she was saying like, oh, do you just have to, something along the lines of, do you just need to drink so much extra to be around family? Because I do, something along those lines. And I said, well, I actually I stopped drinking. I didn't say it in a way that was, and I was just telling her like, I don't drink anymore. And she said, really? And I said, yeah, I had to stop a few years ago. And she's like, well, how do you handle those situations now? And I said, well, I have tools. I meditate. If I need to step away for a little bit, I can. And long story short, she ended up, I saw her like 3 months later. I don't know this woman very well. And she said, I just want you to know that I stopped drinking. Oh my gosh, it could make me emotional right now.
Mm.
Um, and I was like, oh, and I said, well, I hope I didn't come across as meaning that you needed to stop. And she said, no, not at all. She said, I was just so moved by the fact that you had stopped, and I was just kind of looking at my life, and I felt like I think I might need to make that choice. And so it's powerful, you having these live um, podcasts and things to share, because it's
Mm.
amazing what just little bits of information can help others.
It's really, really interesting how quickly something like drinking can sort of take over your life. It's like drug taking, I suppose. I mean, it becomes addictive, and you get to a stage where you can't sort of go through the day without having a quick sniff at lunchtime, and getting home from work and then doing half a bottle of rum or something in the evening.
Yeah.
Uh, and it just kind of sneaks up and just bites you a little bit, and it's not until you actually realise what it's done and how dependent you've become on it that then you take the conscious decision to stop. And then that's not an easy thing to do, to just stop. I did, oh, back in 1990. I was working away. I was drinking about 3 litres of filter coffee a day. I was smoking around about 60 to 80 cigarettes a day, and I came home after being away for 6 months, and I was ill, and I thought, that's it, bomb, I'm stopping smoking, and I just stopped smoking, and it was hard
Mhm.
for a few weeks, but I haven't had a cigarette since.
Oh,
I
wow.
still drink a bit of coffee now and then,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it got to the stage where I was so ill that I had to do something,
Yeah.
and just giving up smoking changed my life a lot at that time.
That's amazing. Wow, that's so powerful that you were able to stop, cold turkey. It doesn't sometimes it
Yeah.
takes, you know, people time and a few times to try again, and to make that
Mm.
decision is just really powerful.
But I think for me it was the only way. I don't think I could gone down the sort of the cutting down, the patches and all that sort of. I just had to stop. But I
Mhm.
was feeling ill, and I think that had a big effect on it, and a bit of willpower and determination as well. That helped.
Yeah, it's amazing when you just feel so horrible in life, what measures that you'll take just to feel a glimpse of feeling good again, That
Yeah.
was kind of the same thing with me with drinking, is I was like, I just don't want to feel like this anymore.
Mm.
You just will do what it takes.
Yeah. I mean, when you can become a functioning alcoholic, um, and you can drink a huge amount and not have a hangover, and that then again it presents itself as a little problem where you're not getting a hangover, you're not feeling awful in the morning, but you just top up. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, that's the problem with drink. Lots of people sort of suffer real terrible hangovers and stuff like that. So I'm never going to drink again. But for somebody that's acclimatized themselves to drinking a lot,
Hmm.
and it becomes a dependency, then
Yeah.
it is quite difficult to give up. But it can be done. Again, you just stop.
Yeah, it can. I went to AA my first year. I needed support. You needed to, you know, that's what really helped me in working the 12 steps and finding a sponsor. I knew that, especially being a single mom, I just didn't want to
Yeah.
chance coming home and feeling stressed and, going and getting that bottle of wine. I just, I knew I needed help. And that really helped me my first year.
Mm. I think that's the key, isn't it? It's realizing that you do need help, that you have
Mhm.
got a problem, and once you've accepted that, then it does make it a little bit easier to be able to do it. I think to give up.
It does. I mean, everybody's path is different. And sometimes people, it's not so easy and they relapse and things like that. But, there is so much help. There's even now, just outside of AA, there's so many different people offering support for addiction and so much easier to find. But it really helps when you have just other people knowing that they've been through it or are going through it, to support you on that path. And for me, it really helped to have a sponsor who was 7 years sober, and I could reach out to her every day.
Mm.
And I think I did for a long time, because it can be confusing too. The first
Mm.
year, there's a lot of miracles, but it's also, I think, a lot of confusion. You're not hanging out with the same friends as much because you're trying not to drink, and you don't want them to feel like they can't drink. So it's you know just trying to work through it all and getting
Mm.
support. So
So you managed it. You got there.
I did it.
So bring us right up to date then. What are you doing at present?
Yeah, so we still have the stories out of the resources. When people were sharing their resources, one thing I realized is that it's so hard for people to put together things that can support them. Just like our physical health, we have a mental health. Everyone has a physical health, everyone has a mental health. And people go and lift weights or run or swim and do all these amazing things to support their physical health. And we are trying to say, let's get resources together to support your mental health. So we work now with universities and corporations and nonprofits to establish basically like a program where we come in and we want to get everyone on your team together, because when everyone's in it together, you feel supported. and
Mm.
and we bring in some experts, and we do this little day event where it's like we are setting you up and then we send you home with a box we have kind of like a box subscription model, except for bigger companies, to have different tools and resources in there for them to get through the next couple of months. And then every couple of months we come in and we refill that package, we check in with everybody and make sure that everybody kind of has this team mentality, that we're in this together. And focus on, how does nutrition affect your mental health, how does uh, uh, creating routine in your day affect your mental health, how does setting up your mornings affect your mental health, how can we set up a lifestyle that really supports us. And it's so much easier to do when everybody's doing it together.
Mm.
There's just that mentality of kind of like everybody else is doing it. And sometimes that can serve people and sometimes it can't. Like, everybody else is doing drugs,
Mm.
it's not. But when we can get everybody to say, hey, let's support our mental health, I feel like it could just really create this ripple effect. So yeah, that's what we're doing now. And learning it's amazing to now. I feel like my mental health is, I would, in some ways, better than it's ever been. But being an entrepreneur, oh my gosh, it's a whole new set of like mental health challenges. I'm like, I've never
So
gone out and raised money before. It's really challenging right now in this climate, and but we're committed to make this work, to support people, where they spend 8 to 10 hours of their day.
Yeah, I think as well, it's more acceptable nowadays to talk about mental health in an open forum, whereas
Hmm.
in the past it's always been a bit of a stigma, it's always been a bit of a taboo, and people sort of don't like to talk about it. I think nowadays it's becoming far more easy to talk about mental health issues across the whole piece. Um, and I think that it can only be a good thing. That can only help everybody to be open and honest about their mental health.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I feel like some of the challenges we're still dealing with is that I think people find it really challenging to go to therapy. Um, a lot of employers are providing therapists now, or at least their insurances, for them to go and get help. And I think they are not always taking employers up on that piece of it, where they could go and get help for free. And I think
Mm.
that's because it's really hard. We had a group the other night, where we were talking about this, and some of the reasons people think it's hard is because it's almost like dating. Like, you have to go and, if this therapist doesn't work, you got to go find another one. And people want instant gratification. They want to feel better now. And it's a process and it takes
Yeah.
time. But if you take, and I still work on my mental health, but if you take, let's say, 3 years of your life, like, let's say you really have to dive into your mental health seriously weekly for 3 years, but yet I'm saying always keep up with it because it's like our physical health. But in the grand scheme of things, if you live to be 100 years old, it's not that much time. And you're worth it. You're worth taking the time to take care of your mental health.
Yeah. Take care of your whole well-being,
Yes.
and I think that's the key to living a long and healthy life. Not
Yeah.
just look after your physical, but also your mental well-being. And if everybody can understand and accept that, then I think the world would be a much better place.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you on that. Mm.
Well, Julie, this has been a fascinating little chat.
Yeah, it has. I've really enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you so much.
Yes,
So how
thank
can
you.
people get hold of you?
So they can go to our website, speakasone.com. They can email us at team@speakasone.com. All of our stories are on our YouTube page, Speak as One. So, and then our Instagram is Speak as One Community.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.